Hi friends, welcome to another video here with Cosplay Vicar. In today's video we're going to be talking about how to start putting together your first cosplay. A number of questions that I get on Instagram is, where did you start? Like, how did you start putting this together? How did you work out where to go and how to do this? And they're really good questions. So I thought we would just talk about today what are the steps that you may want to take when you're thinking about putting together your first cosplay. And of course, this doesn't just apply to your first cosplay. These principles apply to any cosplay that you are going to be doing. So I'm going to walk you through some of the things that I think through when putting together a cosplay for the first time, particularly a costume that I've never engaged with before. It's not a costume that I know much about. How do you go about going from knowing nothing to making it and knowing everything about that costume? So here's a few things that I want to talk to you about today. I want to ask you, is the cosplay that you are thinking about realistic in your perimeters? So for example, if you're saying to yourself that you want to make Master Chief from Halo.
Engage.
Taking Overwatch.
And you have no knowledge of AVA foam, you've got no knowledge of 3D printing, you've got no knowledge of painting and spraying, I'd probably say to you, is that the costume to start with? So first off, I would say choose a costume that's realistic. Because you could choose something that's wildly... I would absolutely love to make the Iron Man costume Mark III. I would love it. But it would be a lot of hard work, and it's took me a number of years to get to the point where I'm thinking, could I do that? I've been cosplaying now for about 7 or 8 years. Let's be honest, my first cosplay started when I was about 10 years old, when I made my first proton pack. So I've been doing this for years, I've been making for years. And even I'm saying, could I do that yet? Is that something that I'm able to do? So can you make this costume in the perimeters that you have got? The size of your home or the size of your flat, the craftability that you've got, the experience that you've got, the money that you have, the time that you have, all of these kind of questions need to educate what kind of costume that you are making. For example, one of the first costumes that I built to really high quality was my Stormtrooper. And I didn't do that until I knew I had the space to be able to make it in and the time to be able to put that together. Prior to that, I did a lot of soft costumes, Superman, Batman, that kind of thing. We purchased costumes just because it was easier at the time. Then I got to the point where I thought, no, I can start making my own. So is the costume that you are thinking about realistic? The second thing you want to ask yourself is this, what is your budget? What have you realistically got to put into this costume? And that will change what kind of build that you do. The question of screen accuracy is really only a question you can ask yourself when you've got lots of money. If you don't have much cash, then don't fight for screen accuracy. That may not be the route you should be going down. Enjoy making is the main route you should be going down. So choosing a costume that you can build in the parameters that you've got, then asking yourself, like, what is my budget? Can I realistically make this under the constraints I've got? For example, if you turn to me and said, Chris, I've got 100 quid and I want to build myself a Stormtrooper costume, I would say to you, well, okay, you're not going to be able to go down the screen accurate route, so you're going to be thinking about making this out of cardboard, EVA foam, possibly a bit of 3D printing, that kind of thing, if you've got 3D printer. So your money will dictate what you're able to do. So being realistic about your budget up front, because if not, costumes spiral out of control. You think, I'm going to do this for 100 quid. The next thing you know, you spent 200, 300, 400 quid. So just be realistic about your budget, and that will set some perimeters for you. Now, the thing about your budget is, I often talk about you've got time or you've got money. And one kind of trades off really with the other. If you've got lots of time, you can save money. If you've got less time, you're going to spend more money because you're going to have to get somebody else doing some of the work for you. Or you will take longer to do it. It may take a number of years to make that costume. But if you've got lots of time, you can save money. If you've got no time at all, you've really only got a couple of hours, maybe a week, if that, then actually you're going to be spending more money because you're going to be buying in some of those parts. The other thing is with your budget is about skilling yourself up. It may well be that you don't have much of a budget, but you do have time. And the thing that you can do is skill yourself up. YouTube is a great way of learning new skills and building up a new repertoire of skills to actually make the thing that you want to make. The more money you've got, the more time you've got, the more skill you've got, the more likely you'll be able to build something that is what you would describe as screen accurate. But screen accuracy isn't necessarily the goal for most costumes. Some costumes that I build, I'm not going for screen accuracy, I'm going for enjoyment. I want to enjoy wearing this, so I'm not worried about the fact it's not 100% perfect, because I'm going for the enjoyment level. There's some costumes I'm going for screen accuracy, and that doesn't mean I lower my enjoyment level, but it means that I am going to need to spend more time on it, more money on it, and build up some skills for it. So not only do you need to think about your perimeters, you need to think about your budget and how you might be able to navigate that. The next thing you do when you're building your first costume is this, and this is where it starts to get into the weeds a little bit. What makes up the costume? You're going to need to do some research about that costume. What does that costume have that you need to know about? And this is where my iPad comes in. I absolutely love researching costumes. So just a little example. This is the man with no name from Good, the Bad and the Ugly. Clint Eastwood. And I'm thinking about, could I make this costume? So the process that I go through is I start to look at the character. I draw out the character. You don't have to do it to this kind of level. Please chill. I start thinking, right, what other parts of the costume? Well, there's a shirt involved, there's jeans involved, there's shoes involved, there's cowboy boots involved. He's got his spurs on there, he's got his belt. He's wearing his own belt and he's wearing a gun belt. He's wearing a vest that's made of fleece. So I start to draw out that costume so I can start to plot, like, what are the parts that I'm going to need to make? And I start to ask myself, where would I get these things from? Is there a place I could find who makes the hat, or is the hat going to be something I'm going to have to make myself? Is it bespoke? So what is it here that I could maybe get somebody else to make for me? I can find on eBay, or there's already a maker out there. Like, to be honest, making some spurs, there's probably somebody out there that makes those spurs, or spurs like it. Can I find out who makes these bits, and can I do a deep dive into the costume? And then once I've done a deep dive into the costume, I go even further. So here we have the poncho. From Good, the Bad and the Ugly. There is a whole load of different people that make those ponchos. So I'm like, right, I want to know who's making a poncho that's in my budget, that is as screen accurate as I can get my hands on. So I start drawing these out and I start plotting which of these, because some of them, they're quite expensive and they maybe come from the US. I need to pay import tax. So I'm asking myself, deep dive, which of these are the most screen accurate, or which of these are the ones I'm most interested in. So draw out the costume. You want to know about the material. You want to know about any specific design features. Are there any specific colours involved with that costume? And I would just draw all of that out. Get to know the costume. The fourth thing I would then say is this: what can you make out of that costume? Which the parts that you realistically can make? So I'm looking at this Good, the Bad and the Ugly costume. I'm like, the poncho is not something I don't think I'm going to be able to make. I'm going to need to find somebody that can make that. But this vest here, this is just a very rustic looking sheepskin vest. I'm thinking, that is something I could make. So I start researching the materials involved, the shapes, how I might put it together. So I start asking the thing, what can I make and what can I buy and what can I afford? So I'm thinking that vest, I could probably make that vest myself. So I'm starting to think out which of the bits I could make and which of the bits I might need to buy from somebody else. Now, if your budget is really low, you're going to have to make more of it yourself. So if I was making this for, like, say 30 quid, I'd go and buy myself a nice IKEA green fleece blanket that you throw on your sofa, and I might start painting on the pattern if I'm going for a really handmade feel of this costume. So I start thinking, what is my budget? What can I make and how can I do this myself? So I start listing out the parts. I start working out the list of the costume parts, and I'm asking who is worth avoiding that makes costume parts. So what I did was, with this one, I listed out the hat, I listed out the poncho, the shirt, I listed out the belts, the jeans. I listed out the cowboy boots, the spurs. And then I started thinking, right, who out there makes that shirt or a shirt like that? So I found online somebody made a very similar shirt for a £5. I also found somebody made a very similar shirt for 50 quid. So I'm kind of looking at these two shirts going, which do I want to go for? So I list out the parts. Then I might also list out who I wouldn't get that part from. This person that makes this part, makes that poncho say, it's so on-screen accurate. Every time I look at it, I'd be like, it's just totally wrong. Because that's what I'm going for at the minute is the screen accuracy. So you want to ask yourself, who should I avoid while making this? The sixth thing then would be a time scale. Like, what time scale are you going to put in? So if you're making something for Halloween and you've got 4 weeks, then you're going to need to plot out your time scale. So say you've got 4 weeks to make a costume. In that time, you might say to yourself, well, I haven't got the, say you're making Batman. I haven't got the time to make the entire Batman, but in that time I could make the cowl. I could make myself a cape out of a bedsheet, I don't know, and I could get myself a Batman t-shirt. A pair of tight jeans and biker boots, that's going to look somewhat like Batman. So in 4 weeks, you might say, like, this is how I'm going to knock up a quick costume, using what I've got in my home or what I could find down at the thrift store or something like that. If you've got 2 months, then you might say to yourself, do you know what, I've got a little bit more time, so rather than buying a t-shirt with a Batman symbol on, I might actually make my own all-in-one with the bat symbol on, and I'll get myself some fell or some cotton and I'll make my own bat symbol, that kind of thing. If you've got 3 months on your hands, you might say, do you know what, I might learn how to mold my own bat sign to go on the costume. So I've got a little bit longer, I might learn how to model that, and I might make my own rubber bat sign to go on the t-shirt. So depending on your time scale will depend on what you are capable of, and be super realistic. Everything takes longer than you ever imagine. Things being delivered take longer, things making or molding take longer. So you want to be realistic around your time scale. But what is your time scale? And the final thing is about just having fun, really. Have some fun. I did lots of research around The Man with No Name, and one of the beautiful pieces in that costume is he has this amazing Colt 1951 pistol. So I did tons of research, I did all my drawings, I printed out pictures of what it looked like. This is the screen used gun. I then started 3D printing, and I had so much fun printing it out, cleaning it up, making all of the parts, and then I sat there with my air gun and I did some paint work on it to try and kind of mimic what was going on color-wise with the gun. And I'm super pleased with my Man with No Name pistol. So have fun. The key thing here is having fun. And if you start to lose the fun, I would ask the question, why? Is it because you're putting too much pressure on yourself with that costume? And if you are, pull back. You don't have to go at the speed that you're going. You don't have to spend the money that you're spending. You can go much slower and have a lot more fun. So let me explain to you about my Darth Vader costume for a moment. Building that during the pandemic, my Darth Vader, I had so much fun with it, but I put so much pressure on myself to make it look screen accurate that I was losing the joy. So I decided to make myself a chest box so that I had something, and then I could refine it and make it better and make it more screen accurate. And doing that made me have so much more fun. I made something, I could start wearing the costume, and then I could actually adapt it and make it more screen accurate. So I ended up making a second and then a third iteration of the chest box because I wanted it to look like it was on the screen. But to get there, I had a little bit of a process of getting there. So there you go, friends. Some ideas around how to start your first cosplay. Think about your realistic perimeters. You think about your budget. What makes up the costume? Do your research. What can you make or what are you going to need to buy? Could you list out the parts and think about where you might get those parts from? Set yourself a time scale. Like, what is a realistic time scale for this project that I'm doing? Then the final thing is just have fun, friends. Cosplaying is meant to be fun. Hey, we're grown adults wearing costumes. It's meant to be fun, so enjoy it. So friends, until next time, have great fun making your cosplay, and I'd love to see your costumes. If you are on Instagram, I am at Cosplay Vicar, and I would love to see pictures of the costumes that you are making. So until next time, enjoy cosplaying.